Nobody saw the war inside me when the lights went down at night. When I smiled through conversations while my soul was losing fights. When exhaustion wrapped around me like chains I could not break, and I kept pretending I was strong for everybody's sake. There were prayers I could not finish, tears I wiped before they fell, thoughts that whispered hopeless stories I was far too scared to tell. But even in the middle of the darkness, trying to pull me underneath, something deep inside kept calling me to breathe. There were mornings I awakened, already tired of being alive, already fighting thoughts and pressures just to make it through the day. And I carried silent battles nobody around me understood, because pain can hide so deeply behind someone looking good. I kept asking heaven softly, Lord, do you still see me here? While anxiety and sadness kept speaking louder than my prayers. But every time I nearly gave up and let the hopelessness win, your mercy reached into the shadows again. The war didn't take me, the fire didn't break me, the darkness could not bury what heaven still called alive, because Jesus already won, Jesus already conquered, and every chain around me is falling one by one. Oh, I know what it feels like carrying wounds no one can see, to look completely fine outside while breaking quietly beneath, to worship through exhaustion, to praise while barely standing still, to keep showing up in faith when life feels heavier than your will. And sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought in your mind, the constant fear, the hidden pressure, the ache you cannot leave behind. But the enemy cannot destroy the soul that still cries out to God. Even from the lowest place it falls. There were whispers in the silence, telling me I never heal, telling me the weight I carried was too deep and far too real, telling me that God had left me somewhere in the middle of the pain, that joy would never find me and peace would never come again. But lies begin to lose their power in the presence of His voice, and fear begins to tremble when the weary still rejoice, because the cross already settled what darkness tried to steal. Oh, and resurrection still remains real. I have walked through valleys so lonely I could barely hear my own prayers, nights so emotionally heavy, sleep felt impossible to reach, moments where disappointment wrapped around my chest so tightly. I wondered if my heart would ever breathe lightly. But even there, where silence felt louder than any song, where I questioned if could never see, while God was quietly carrying me. So let hell hear this clearly: I belong to Jesus still. Even wounded, even weary, even struggling to heal, because victory was never built upon my fragile strength alone. It was written through the blood poured out upon the cross. And every weapon formed against me may still rise for a moment, but none of them can overpower the love that calls me chosen. For the one who conquered death itself still stands defending me, and His peace still speaks over me. Chains are breaking slowly in places I cannot explain. Walls are quietly collapsing every time I speak His name. And though the healing is an instant and the process takes its time, I can feel light returning where darkness used to thrive. Because God does His deepest work in hidden quiet places, and the tears nobody notices, in unseen sacred spaces. And every time I kneel exhausted and surrender all I am, He meets me there again. There is still purpose in my breathing, still beauty left ahead, even if disappointment once convinced me hope was dead. Because heaven never abandoned me in my weakest hour, and grace kept holding on to me when I had lost my